little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
We all saw what happened with the former President Donald Trump on the 14th of July. Well, this is not the first time a president has been shot and has had an assassination attempt done on them. Today, we're going to look at all the assassination attempts on U.S. presidents. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, is one of the most revered leaders in American history. Born on February 12, 1809, in a log cabin in Kentucky, Lincoln rose from humble beginnings to become a prominent lawyer and politician. He was elected president in 1860, and his leadership during the Civil War, 1861-1865, united the country and ended slavery. Lincoln's commitment to preserving the Union and his strong leadership during the war earned him the respect and admiration of many Americans. On the evening of April 14, 1865, President Lincoln and his wife Mary arrived at Ford's Theater, a popular playhouse in Washington, D.C. They were looking forward to a night out, enjoying the comedy Our American Cousin. The president was in high spirits, having recently visited the battlefield at Appomattox, where General Robert E. Lee had surrendered his Confederate army. As the play began, Lincoln settled into his seat in the presidential box, a special section reserved for him. Mary sat beside him, and their guests, Major Henry Rathbone and his fiancée, Clara Harris, sat in the box as well.
Again, I say, with malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, we shall bind up the nation's wounds and cherish peace. That government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Thank you. God bless you all.
Mr. Lincoln, I'm just proud of you.
The actors took the stage, and the audience laughed and clapped along with the performance. At around 10:15 p.m., during the third act, John Wilkes Booth entered the presidential box. He was a well-known actor and Confederate sympathizer who had grown increasingly bitter about the South's defeat. Booth had conspired with several others to kidnap Lincoln, but later decided to assassinate him instead. Booth approached Lincoln from behind. behind and shot him in the back of the head with a Derringer pistol. The president slumped forward, mortally wounded. Mary Lincoln screamed, and the actors on stage immediately stopped the play. The audience gasped in shock and horror, unsure of what was happening. Booth jumped from the balcony to the stage, breaking his leg in the process. He escaped through the back door, leaving behind a trail of blood and chaos. The actors and audience members rushed to the presidential box to assist Lincoln, but it was too late. The president was unconscious and bleeding profusely. The theater erupted into pandemonium as people rushed to escape the building. The actors and stagehands tried to revive Lincoln, but he was beyond help. The president was carried across the street to a boarding house, where he died the next morning at 7:22 a.m. The news of Lincoln's assassination sent shockwaves across the nation, plunging America into mourning. The country was in chaos, with riots and protests breaking out in cities across the North. The government scrambled to respond, with Secretary of War Edwin Stanton taking charge of the investigation. The manhunt for Booth was intense, with thousands of soldiers and detectives searching for him. He was eventually tracked down to a barn in Virginia, where he was killed by Union soldiers on April 26, 1865. 8 conspirators were arrested, tried, and executed for their roles in the assassination. Lincoln's death was a devastating blow to the nation, and it marked the end of an era. He was remembered as a champion of freedom, equality, and unity, and his legacy continues to inspire Americans to this day. James A. Garfield, the 20th President of the United States, was a man of great vision and leadership. Born on November 19, 1831, in Orange Township, Ohio, Garfield rose from humble beginnings to become a prominent politician and president. He was a strong advocate for education and civil rights, and his leadership during the Civil War and Reconstruction era was instrumental in shaping the country's future. Garfield's presidency was marked by significant accomplishments, including the passage of the Pendleton Civil Service Act and the establishment of the United States Civil Service Commission. On the morning of July 2, 1881, Garfield arrived at the Baltimore and Potomac Railroad Station in Washington, D.C., preparing to depart for a summer vacation in New Jersey. He was looking forward to spending time with his family and friends and was in high spirits as he walked through the station. However, his life was about to take a tragic turn. Charles J. Guiteau, a disgruntled office seeker, had been waiting for the president, fueled by a delusional belief that Garfield owed him a political appointment. Guiteau had become increasingly bitter and erratic, convinced that the president was responsible for his own failures. Garfield approached the train platform. Guiteau stepped forward and shot him twice at close range. The president collapsed to the floor, mortally wounded. Guiteau was immediately arrested, and Garfield was rushed to a nearby hospital for treatment. The next 79 days were a roller coaster of emotions for the nation as Garfield fought for his life. His medical team, led by Dr. Willard Bliss, worked tirelessly to save him, but their efforts were ultimately unsuccessful. Garfield suffered from infections, complications, and excruciating pain, but he remained steadfast and courageous until the end. His family and closest friends were by his side, praying and comforting him as he struggled to recover. The nation held its breath, hoping for a miraculous recovery, but it was not meant to be. Garfield died on September 19, 1881, at 2:35 a.m., surrounded by those he loved. The news of his death sent shockwaves across the country. The investigation into Garfield's assassination revealed a web of deceit and conspiracy. Guiteau had acted alone in the shooting, but he had been motivated by a toxic mix of political ambition and delusional thinking. The tragedy exposed deep divisions within the Republican Party and raised questions about the president's security. The Garfield administration had received several threats and warnings about potential assassins, but they had not taken adequate measures to protect the president. The tragedy led to significant changes in the way presidents were protected, including the creation of the Secret Service. Guiteau was tried, convicted, and executed for the crime, but the nation was left to grapple with the aftermath of the tragedy. Garfield's legacy as a president and leader has endured long after his death. He is remembered for his strong leadership during the Civil War and Reconstruction era, and his commitment to education and civil rights.
William McKinley, the 25th President of the United States, was a man of great vision and leadership. Born on January 29, 1843, in Niles, Ohio, he was a strong advocate for American business and industry, and his leadership during the Spanish-American War and the Industrial Revolution was instrumental in shaping the country's future. McKinley's presidency was marked by significant accomplishments, including the passage of the Gold Standard Act and the annexation of Hawaii. It was a sunny day in Buffalo, New York, on September 6, 1901. President William McKinley, accompanied by his wife Ida, had arrived at the Pan American Exposition, a World's Fair showcasing innovation and progress. As they walked through the crowds, McKinley was in high spirits, shaking hands and greeting well-wishers. The smell of popcorn and cotton candy filled the air, and the sound of laughter and music drifted through the streets. But amidst the joy and celebration, a sense of unease hung in the air. Leon Czolgosz, a 28-year-old anarchist, had been waiting for the president. He was fueled by a delusional belief that McKinley was responsible for the country's problems, and he had a vendetta against the government. Czolgosz had been stalking McKinley for days, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. As McKinley approached the Temple of Music, a building dedicated to the arts, Czolgosz saw his chance. He pushed his way through the crowd, his hand wrapped in a bandage to conceal the revolver he was carrying. At 2:14 p.m., Czolgosz reached out to shake McKinley's hand, but instead, he fired 2 shots at point-blank range. The president collapsed to the floor, mortally wounded. Panic erupted as the crowd scrambled to get away from the shooter. Czolgosz was immediately tackled by bystanders and arrested. McKinley was rushed to a nearby hospital, where doctors fought to save his life. The nation was in shock, praying for the president's recovery. As the news of the assassination attempt spread, the country was plunged into chaos. Vice President Theodore Roosevelt, who was hiking in Vermont, rushed back to Buffalo to be by McKinley's side. The government sprang into action, deploying troops and Secret Service agents to protect the president and his family. The next 8 days were a roller coaster of emotions for the nation as McKinley fought for his life. His medical team, led by Dr. Matthew Mann, worked tirelessly to save him, but their efforts were ultimately unsuccessful. McKinley suffered from infections, complications, and excruciating pain, but he remained steadfast and courageous until the end. As the investigation into the assassination unfolded, it became clear that Czolgosz had acted alone. He was a self-proclaimed anarchist, motivated by a twisted ideology that saw the government as the enemy. The tragedy exposed deep divisions within the country and raised questions about the president's security. The McKinley administration had received several threats and warnings about potential assassins, but they had not taken adequate measures to protect the president. Czolgosz was tried and convicted of the crime, and he was executed by electric chair on October 29, 1901. The trial revealed the depth of his delusional thinking and the twisted ideology that had driven him to commit such a heinous act. But McKinley's death was not just a political tragedy. It was also a personal one. His wife, Ida, was devastated by his loss, and his friends and family were left to pick up the pieces. The nation was left to wonder what could have been, if only McKinley had been spared. In the aftermath of McKinley's death, the country came together to mourn the loss of a great leader. His funeral procession was one of the largest in American history, with millions of people lining the streets to pay their respects. McKinley's legacy has endured for over a century, a reminder of the importance of leadership and vision in American politics. The year was 1912, and Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th President of the United States, was running for a third term as the candidate of the Progressive Party. On October 14th, Roosevelt was campaigning in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a city known for its strong progressive leanings. As he stood up to deliver a speech at the Milwaukee Auditorium, a shocking event occurred. It was a chilly autumn evening in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, October 14th, 1912. Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th President of the United States, stood confidently at the podium, ready to deliver a speech that would rally the crowd and solidify his campaign for a third term. But little did he know, a sinister plot was unfolding just feet away. John Schrank, a 36-year-old saloon keeper with a twisted obsession, had been stalking Roosevelt for weeks. Driven by a deranged dream in which the ghost of William McKinley commanded him to avenge his assassination, Schrank was determined to take down the former president. As Roosevelt began to speak, Schrank pushed his way through the crowd, his hand trembling with anticipation. With a sudden jerk, he fired a single shot from his .38 caliber revolver at point-blank range. The bullet pierced Roosevelt's chest, but fate intervened, and the speech in his breast pocket slowed it down, saving his life. Roosevelt stumbled backward, his face contorted in pain, but his resolve unshaken. With a steady hand, he pulled out his speech and began to deliver it, his voice ringing out across the auditorium. The crowd gasped in horror, but Roosevelt's courage and determination inspired them to rally around him. As he spoke, his aides and bodyguards rushed to his side, pleading with him to seek medical attention. But Roosevelt refused to be swayed, his eyes fixed on the horizon of his vision for America. Finally, after delivering his speech, he allowed himself to be led away, his shirt and suit covered in blood. Schrank was apprehended on the spot, his twisted dreams shattered by the reality of his failed attempt. Roosevelt was rushed to the hospital, where doctors marveled at his strength and resilience as they worked to repair the damage. The assassination attempt on Roosevelt cemented his place in American history, a testament to his bravery and unwavering dedication to his principles. His progressive policies and bold leadership style continue to inspire generations of Americans. Roosevelt's legacy extends far beyond his political career, a shining example of courage and determination in the face of adversity. His unwavering commitment to his beliefs and his unshakable optimism have made him one of the most beloved and respected figures in American history. In the years that followed, Roosevelt's legend only grew, inspiring generations to come. His name became synonymous with courage and leadership, shaping American politics and policy for decades to come. During his time in prison, Schrank was kept in solitary confinement, where he spent the remainder of his days in isolation. He died in prison on September 15, 1943, at the age of 67, still holding on to his delusional beliefs about Roosevelt and McKinley. In conclusion, the assassination attempt on Theodore Roosevelt was a pivotal moment in American history, showcasing his unyielding spirit and resolve. His legacy continues to inspire generations, a reminder of the power of leadership, resilience, and the unwavering pursuit of our ideals. Today, Roosevelt's progressive policies and bold leadership style remain a beacon of hope for a better future, inspiring new generations of leaders and citizens alike to strive for a more just and equitable society. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the 32nd President of the United States, was a leader like no other. Born on January 30th, 1882, in Hyde Park, New York, Roosevelt came from a wealthy family and was raised with a strong sense of public service. He was a distant cousin of President Theodore Roosevelt and adopted many of his progressive policies. Franklin D. Roosevelt's life was marked by adversity, including a bout with polio in 1921 that left him paralyzed from the waist down. However, his determination and resilience only strengthened his resolve to serve the nation. On the chilly winter evening of February 15, 1933, President Franklin D. Roosevelt was attending a dinner party at Bayfront Park in Miami, Florida. The president, just a few weeks into his presidency, was in high spirits, surrounded by friends and dignitaries. As he stood up to deliver a speech, a sudden burst of gunfire pierced the air. Giuseppe Zangara, a 32-year-old Italian immigrant, had fired several shots at the president from just a few feet away. In the chaos that ensued, Roosevelt remained calm and composed, a testament to his strong leadership and composure under pressure. However, the bullets missed the president, but struck several others, including Chicago Mayor Anton Chermak, who later died from his wounds. The crowd was in a state of panic as Secret Service agents rushed to apprehend Zangara. The would-be assassin was quickly subdued and taken into custody. His motives later revealed to be rooted in his political beliefs as an anarchist.
10:35 p.m. on the evening of February the 15th, Franklin Roosevelt had just completed offering a few remarks when a young Italian immigrant, 5'1", stood up on a bench, and he reached in his pocket, got out a cheap $8 pistol, and pointed it at the President-elect of the United States. A woman standing next to him saw what was happening, and in her mind, she said, "My God, he's going to kill Franklin Roosevelt."
When the first shot was fired, I realized he was shooting at someone, and I taken my right arm and pushed the pistol up just as hard as I could.
Instead of the bullet hitting Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the bullet hit a man by the name of Anton Chermak, who was the mayor of Chicago, Illinois. Chermak was driven in Roosevelt's car, cradled in Roosevelt's arms, all the way to a Miami hospital.
Chermak, mortally wounded with a bullet in his lungs, told FDR, "I'm glad it was me instead of you." The gun-waving man was Giuseppe Zangara, an Italian-born unemployed bricklayer.
Giuseppe Zangara, better known as Joe, was not an anarchist. That was proved later on. He was a person who did not like leaders of any country.
You don't like him for president?
No, that's all.
As a man, he's all right.
No, he's all right. My president is all right.
Joe Zangara was sentenced by the judge 80 years in prison for the attempted assassination on Anton Chermak. But on March 6th, 1933, Chermak died. And immediately then, the judge decreed that Chermak's assassin should be executed. And he was on March 20th, 1933.
Zangara's last words before his electrocution were, "Goodbye, addio to the world. Go ahead, push the button."
The attempted assassination also led to significant changes in Secret Service protocols and presidential security measures. The agency began to take a more proactive approach to protecting the president, including advanced scouting of locations and increased surveillance. These measures have continued to evolve, ensuring the safety of our leaders and the continuity of our government. In conclusion, the attempted assassination of Franklin D. Roosevelt was a pivotal moment in American history, showcasing the president's courage and leadership in the face of danger. His legacy continues to inspire generations, a reminder of the power of leadership and the importance of perseverance in the face of adversity.
On November 21, 1963, President John F. Kennedy hopped onto the Air Force One with his wife Jacqueline for a 2-day tour of Texas, where he was scheduled to give a speech of his candidacy for the 1964 presidential elections. They first landed at the Carswell Air Force Base for a short stay in Fort Worth. The next morning, Kennedy made a speech outside Hotel Texas to a large crowd. He then made another speech during the breakfast inside.
I know now why everyone in Texas, Fort Worth, is so thin, having gotten up and down about 9 times. This is what you do every morning. Mr. Buck, Mr. Vice President, Governor Conley, Senator Yarborough, Jim Wright, members of the congressional delegation, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Attorney General, ladies and gentlemen. 2 years ago, I said that, introduced myself in Paris by saying that I was the man who had accompanied Mrs. Kennedy to Paris. I'm getting somewhat that same sensation as I travel around Texas.
They soon left the hotel and went back to the Carswell Air Force Base by a motorcade. They got onto the Air Force One again and made a very short flight, about 30 miles towards Dallas. It's a pretty average morning in Dallas, Texas, and the President and Mrs. Kennedy just landed at the Love Field Airport on the Air Force One. They spent several minutes shaking hands with the public and received a bouquet of roses from a kind lady. They then got into the back seats of the open-top 1961 4-door Lincoln Continental limousine, along with the Democratic governor of Texas, John Connally, with his wife, Nellie Connally, in the middle row seats as part of the motorcade. The motorcade was to last in the Dallas Trademark, approximately 10 miles from the airport, where the president had to deliver a speech. As they moved through downtown Dallas, Nellie Connally turned around and told the president, "Mr. President, you can't say Dallas doesn't love you." To which the president replied, "No, you certainly can't." These were the last words of the president. At around 12:30 in the afternoon, they were slowly moving towards the Texas School of Depository. Everything was going fine, and the crowd kept cheering and welcoming the president with pure joy, until... Three shots fired. The first one hits the president's neck and goes through the shoulder of the governor. The second shot hits the president directly on the head, and the third one misses. The blood splattered everywhere, the rear end of the vehicle, Mrs. Kennedy's dress, and even on the following Secret Service vehicle. The limousine rushed towards the Parkland Memorial Hospital, but it was too late. The governor was able to recover, but the president was soon declared dead. Many witnesses pointed out the southeast corner window on the top floor of the school, saying that's where they heard the shots from. An employee named Lee Oswald rushed down the floors, but came across a police officer. He seemed suspicious, but was let go because his supervisor identified him as an employee. Oswald immediately left the scene. He also shot a cop on the way with his revolver, who thought of his suspicions. A man named Johnny Calvin Brewer noticed Oswald's suspicious behavior and followed him to the Texas Theater, where he was later arrested. The police found a rifle on the 6th floor, just as the witnesses claimed. The weapon found in the school building turned out to be a Carcano M91 38 bolt-action rifle, which was known for its horrible precision. It was actually shocking to many people how the assassin managed to hit the moving target, approximately 250 feet away, with the first shot. Oswald had recently purchased the second-hand Italian Carcano, which he bought under an alias. On November 24th, Oswald was taken from the city jail to county jail after being held hostage for 2 nights. But suddenly, a man named Jack Ruby shot Oswald with his pistol, right in front of everyone and the millions of Americans watching the event live. Oswald died 2 hours later in the Parkland Memorial Hospital. On November 25th, a state funeral was held for the president, with millions of people seeing it on live broadcast. On November 29, 1963, President Lyndon Johnson created a President's Commission on the Assassination of John F. Kennedy, known as the Warren Commission. This included almost all the details of what happened on the day of assassination. Robert F. Kennedy, also known as Bobby Kennedy, grew up in a vibrant and competitive household. Being the seventh of 9 children to Joseph P. Kennedy Sr. and Rose Fitzgerald Kennedy, his childhood was marked by a strong emphasis on public service, religion, and family loyalty. The Kennedy family would often engage in lively debates and discussions on politics and social issues, fostering an environment that encouraged critical thinking and civic engagement. Bobby's father, Joseph P. Kennedy Sr., was a successful businessman and diplomat who served as the U.S. ambassador to the UK. Bobby's mother, Rose, was a devout Catholic who emphasized the value of faith and compassion. Tuesday, June 4, 1968. Robert F. Kennedy wins the California primary, a crucial victory in his bid for the Democratic presidential nomination. Kennedy delivers a victory speech at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, California, at around 12:15 a.m. on June 5th.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I want to express my high regard to Don Drysdale. Who pitched his 6th straight shutout tonight. What I think is quite clear is that we can work together in the last analysis, and that what has been going on within the United States over the period of the last 3 years, the divisions, the violence, the disenchantment with our society, the divisions, whether it's between blacks and whites, between the poor and the more affluent, or between age groups, or on the war in Vietnam, that we can start to work together. We are a great country, a selfish country, and a compassionate country. And I intend to make that my basis for running and over the period of the next few months.
After the speech, Kennedy is escorted through the hotel's kitchen and pantry area, where he shakes hands with supporters and hotel staff. At around 12:20 a.m., Kennedy is shot by Sirhan Sirhan, a 24-year-old Palestinian immigrant who is standing in the pantry area. Sirhan fires multiple shots from a .22 caliber revolver at close range, striking Kennedy in the head and neck. Kennedy collapses to the floor, surrounded by his wife Ethel, aides, and hotel staff. Pandemonium erupts in the pantry area, with screams and chaos filling the air. Hotel staff and aides rush to Kennedy's side, attempting to stop the bleeding and provide medical assistance. Sirhan is tackled to the ground by hotel staff and aides, including football player Rosie Greer and writer George Plimpton. The hotel's security team and Los Angeles Police Department are called to the scene. Kennedy is rushed to Good Samaritan Hospital, located about 2 miles from the Ambassador Hotel. He undergoes emergency surgery, but his injuries are too severe. At 1:44 a.m. on June 5th, Kennedy is pronounced dead at the hospital. Sirhan Sirhan is arrested at the scene and taken into custody by the Los Angeles Police Department. Sirhan is later charged with murder and convicted in 1969. The investigation reveals that Sirhan acted alone, motivated by his opposition to Kennedy's support for Israel. Kennedy's funeral is held on June 8, 1968, at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City.
George Wallace was born on August 25, 1919, in Clio, a small town in southeastern Alabama. Raised in a modest, rural environment, Wallace experienced firsthand the economic hardships of the Great Depression. Wallace was a determined and ambitious student, excelling in both academics and sports. After graduating from high school, Wallace attended the University of Alabama, where he earned a law degree in 1942. On May 15, 1972, Governor George Wallace of Alabama, a prominent political figure known for his staunch segregationist stance, was the target of an assassination attempt while campaigning for the Democratic presidential nomination. The incident occurred at a shopping center in Laurel, Maryland, where Wallace was delivering a campaign speech.
I did represent more of the average citizen in this country than did any other candidate, based on the fact that the man who works each day for a living and pays the taxes and holds the country together has been ignored, except on election day.
Well, gentlemen, the next president of the United States, the Honorable George C.
As he was mingling with the crowd afterward, Arthur Bremer, a 21-year-old from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, approached and shot him 5 times at close range. The bullets inflicted severe injuries on Wallace, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down for the rest of his life. 3 other individuals, including a Secret Service agent and a campaign volunteer, were also wounded in the shooting. Wallace was rushed to the hospital, where he underwent extensive surgeries, but the damage to his spinal cord was irreversible. This tragic event abruptly ended his vigorous campaign and dramatically altered the course of his political career. Arthur Bremer, the assailant, was quickly apprehended at the scene. He was later convicted of attempted murder and sentenced to 63 years in prison, though he was released on parole in 2007 after serving 35 years. Bremer's motives were primarily rooted in a desire for personal notoriety rather than political ideology, as revealed in his diary, which was discovered after the shooting. Gerald Ford was born on July 14, 1913, in Omaha, Nebraska, as Leslie Lynch King Jr. His parents separated shortly after his birth, and his mother moved them to Grand Rapids, Michigan, where she remarried Gerald Rudolph Ford, a local businessman. Ford adopted his stepfather's name and was raised in a stable and nurturing environment. He was an Eagle Scout and a standout athlete, excelling in football at South High School. His talents on the field earned him a scholarship to the University of Michigan, where he played as a center and linebacker on the football team. After graduating in 1935, Ford attended Yale Law School, balancing his studies with coaching football. Gerald Ford, the 38th President of the United States, faced 2 assassination attempts within a span of just 17 days in September 1975. Both incidents were carried out in California and were notably thwarted before any harm could come to Ford. The first attempt occurred on September 5, 1975 in Sacramento. Lynette Squeaky Fromm, a follower of the infamous Charles Manson, pulled a .45 caliber pistol on Ford as he walked through Capitol Park.
Started his town hall meeting tour yesterday. He was walking to the Capitol building. The president. At first, no one knew what it was. Secret Service men were yelling, "Get out of the way!"
I was about 15 feet from where the president was moving down the line of people shaking hands, and he reached out to shake hands with a young woman, and just about that time there was another person, a red-headed woman, moved toward him. I couldn't see what she was doing, but all at once the president made a motion like this, as if he'd been punched or pinched or something.
Fromm, wearing a red robe, aimed the gun at Ford, but did not fire. She later claimed the gun jammed, though it was later found that the pistol had no round in the chamber. Secret Service agents quickly subdued Fromm, and she was arrested and later sentenced to life in prison for the attempt. Just over 2 weeks later, on September 22, 1975, Ford faced another assassination attempt, this time in San Francisco. Sarah Jane Moore, a political radical, fired a shot at Ford as he exited the St. Francis Hotel. The bullet missed Ford by several feet, largely due to the quick actions of bystander Oliver Sipple, who grabbed Moore's arm as she fired. Moore was tackled by police and Secret Service agents immediately after the shot. She was also sentenced to life in prison. These back-to-back assassination attempts highlighted the vulnerabilities in presidential security at the time and led to increased measures to protect the president. Both incidents also underscored the turbulent social and political atmosphere of the 1970s, marked by intense political activism and disillusionment in the post-Watergate era. Despite these dangers, Ford continued his public appearances with minimal alteration to his schedule, demonstrating a commitment to his role and a desire to project a sense of stability and calm.
Ronald Reagan was the 40th president of USA. He became the president in 1984 after defeating Walter Mondale.
Bedtime. But let me just say first of all, this has been, well, there's never been a more humbling moment in my life.
On March 30th, 1981, Reagan was exiting the Hilton Hotel in Washington, D.C., where he had just given a speech before members of the AFL-CIO. As he raised his arm to salute the crowd gathered outside, 6 shots were fired toward him. President Reagan and 3 others were hit, including Press Secretary James Brady, who was left disabled. The bullet that hit Reagan narrowly missed his heart, but struck his rib, leading to a punctured lung. Reagan was rushed to the hospital, and emergency surgery saved his life. The person who tried to assassinate Ronald was John Warnock Hinckley Jr. Hinckley fired shots from a revolver. But why did he try to assassinate the president? Hinckley was reportedly seeking fame to impress actress Jodie Foster, with whom he had a fixation after watching her in Martin Scorsese's 1976 film, Taxi Driver.
You can't live like this. It's a hell. A girl should live at home.
He became obsessed with the film Taxi Driver, in which disturbed protagonist Travis Bickle, played by Robert De Niro, plots to assassinate a presidential candidate. Hinckley developed an infatuation with Jodie Foster, who played Iris, a 12-year-old child. He used to send Foster love letters and romantic poems, and repeatedly calling and leaving her messages. Failing to develop any meaningful contact with Foster, Hinckley decided that the only way to get her attention is to somehow get in the headlines of newspapers. And for that, he settled on a scheme to impress her by assassinating the president. Hinckley arrived in Washington, D.C. on March 29, 1981. Hinckley spent the morning composing a letter to Jodie Foster. This is a picture of his letter. At 2:27 p.m., Hinckley was among a crowd of several hundred outside the hotel. When Reagan emerged from the hotel, Hinckley shot all the gun's 6 bullets at him. Hinckley was found not guilty by reason of insanity.
By its very existence and character, Berlin remains the most compelling argument for an open world. We're reminded of the many traditions of openness and democracy that have marked the history of this city. America missed me.
What are your thoughts on this? Tell us in the comments. Would you try to assassinate a president to get attention of your favorite actress? "42nd President of USA, Bill Clinton became the president in 1993 after defeating George Bush. Bill Clinton remained the president for 8 years, and in that time, there has been a lot of assassinations attempt on him. The first one happened in January 1994. Ronald Gene Barber, retired military officer and freelance writer, plotted to kill Clinton while the president was jogging. Before he put his plans to kill Clinton into effect, Ronald Gene Barber attempted suicide at his apartment in Florida. After the attempt failed, he put his gun and clothes in his car and drove toward West Virginia, where he intended to try again. But Barber missed his exit and decided instead to drive to Washington, D.C. to kill Clinton. He walked around the White House several times. But then Barber learned that the president was in Russia, so he headed back to Florida and sold his gun. The Secret Service soon learned about Ronald Gene Barber's confession and began an investigation. He was eventually charged with threatening to kill the president. On May 27, 1994, Barber was found guilty by an Orlando jury and sentenced to 5 years in prison. The next attempt happened in October 1994. 26-year-old Francisco Martin Duran shot at least 29 shots with a Type 56 semi-automatic rifle at the White House from a fence overlooking the North Lawn, thinking that Clinton was among the men in dark suits standing there. 3 tourists, Harry Rakoski, Ken Davis, and Robert Haynes, tackled Duran before he could injure anyone. Found to have a suicide note in his pocket, Duran was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Third assassination attempt happened in 1994. Osama bin Laden recruited Ramzi Youssef to attempt to assassinate Bill Clinton. Youssef went to Philippines, and there he was ordered to assassinate Bill Clinton, who was due to arrive in the Philippines on November 12, 1994, as part of a 5-day tour of Asia. Although Youssef thought of several ways to kill the president, he decided against this, reasoning the plan to be too difficult. Instead, he decided to target Pope John Paul II instead. The last assassination attempt happened in 1996. During his visit to the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum in Manila, Clinton's motorcade was rerouted before it was to drive over a bridge. Secret Service officers had intercepted a message suggesting that an attack was imminent, and Louis Merletti, the director of the Secret Service, ordered the motorcade to be rerouted. An intelligence team later discovered a bomb under the bridge. Subsequent U.S. investigation revealed that the plot was masterminded by a Saudi terrorist living in Afghanistan named Osama bin Laden. Many plans were made to assassinate Bill Clinton, but all of them failed thanks to the efforts of Secret Service.
Theory you want. Not just people saying, I'm going to go fix it, but what are we going to do? What I think we have to do is invest in American jobs, American education, control American health care costs, and bring the American people together again.
George Bush became the 43rd president of USA after defeating John Kerry in 2001. His tenure ended in 2008, and in that time, there has been 3 assassination attempts on him. First one happened in February 2001. Bush was in the residence area of the White House. Robert W. Pickett, standing outside the perimeter fence, shot a number of shots from a Taurus .38 special revolver in the direction of the White House. He was shot in the knee by a United States Secret Service agent and arrested. Pickett was initially charged with discharging a firearm during a crime, carrying a 10-year mandatory sentence. He was sentenced to 3 years at the Federal Medical Center. The next attack happened in May 2005. Bush was giving a speech in Freedom Square while a man named Vladimir Arutunian threw a live Soviet-made RGD-5 hand grenade toward the podium. It landed in the crowd about 61 feet from the podium after hitting a girl, but it did not detonate because a red tartan handkerchief was wrapped tightly around it, preventing the safety lever from detaching. Georgian President Mikhail Saakashvili was seated nearby. After escaping that day, Arutunian was arrested in July 2005. He was convicted in January 2006 and given a life sentence. The last attack happened in 2008. It was a shoe attack. Iraqi journalist Muntadhar al-Zaidi threw both of his shoes at Bush during an Iraqi press conference. Bush quickly ducked, avoiding being hit by either of the shoes. The second shoe hit the U.S. flag, and al-Zaidi was subsequently grabbed, kicked, and hurried out of the room by guards. Al-Zaidi received a 3-year prison sentence, which was reduced to 2 years. On September 15, 2009, after 9 months of incarceration, he was released early because he had no prior criminal record.
The nation sends its love and compassion to everybody who is here. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for making the nation proud. And may God bless America.
The most recent attack happened this week on former President Donald Trump during his rally in Pennsylvania. The shooter fired multiple shots on him, and one of them hit his right ear that pierced the upper part of his ear. Trump immediately fell down after getting shot, and Secret Service took down the shooter with a sniper. One spectator was killed, and 2 others were critically injured. The shooter was identified by the FBI as Thomas Matthews Crooks. Donald Trump then got up and raised a defiant fist into the air as he was hustled off the stage and out of the rally. Seven or 8 shots were fired, and 3 of them were fired when Trump was standing up. Here's the demonstration of the bullets. The first bullet that pierced Trump's ear also hit the spectator standing in the crowd. Crooks was laying down on a roof of a shed, which was on the right side of Trump. The Secret Service agent, who was closest to the killer, likely would have had their line of sight to the building blocked by the trees, making it difficult for them to see Crooks clearly. But the team farther away fired the single shot that killed Crooks. Donald Trump was facing the audience when someone yelled that, "He's got a gun!" And at that time, Trump moved his head to the right. And at that exact moment, Crooks shot a bullet which hit his right ear. The shooter had aimed for his head, but the slight movement that Trump made saved his life. The Secret Service agents covered Trump for a minute until they got the signal that the shooter is dead. Here is the recording of the agents.
Move it there. Hold. When you're ready. On you. Ready. Move. Up. Move. Go. Up. Hawkeye's here. Hawkeye's here. Move it to the stair. Stair, get ready. Stair, get ready. We ready? Shooter's down. Shooter's down. Are we good? Shooter's down. Shooter's down. Are we good to move? Shooter's down. We're good to move. We're clear. We're clear. Let's move. We're clear.
Let me get my shoes. Let me get my shoes.
I got you, sir. I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes, sir.
Hold that in your head. It's bloody.
So we gotta move to the bus. Move to the bus. Let me get my shoes.
Okay, my shoes down. My shoes.
Watch out.
Wait.
This is what President Joe Biden said about the attack.
Jill and I are keeping him and his family in our prayers. We also extend our deepest condolences to the family of the victim who was killed. He was a father. He was protecting his family from the bullets that were being fired, and he lost his life. God love him. We're also praying for the full recovery of those who were injured, and we're grateful to the Secret Service agents and other law enforcement agencies and individuals who risked their lives literally for our nation. As I said last night, there is no place in America for this kind of violence, or any violence for that matter. An assassination attempt is contrary to everything we stand for as a nation, everything. It's not who we are as a nation. It's not America. And we cannot allow this to happen. Unity is the most elusive goal of all, but nothing is important than that right now, unity. We'll debate and we'll disagree. That's not going to change, but we're going to not lose sight, in fact, who we are as Americans. Look, Vice President Harris and I were just briefed in the Situation Room.
Some people think that the attack was staged by Donald Trump because the elections are nearby, and he did this to win the elections. There is a video of a Secret Service agent in which it looks like he already took the aim before the shooter shot the bullets. Here is the video. The reason why the agent didn't shoot, because as we mentioned before, there were trees in front of him that were blocking his aim, and that is why the team behind him shot the killer. Another conspiracy is that people are saying that if Trump was actually in danger, the Secret Service agents would not have allowed Trump to remain a target even after the target was neutralized. Former Secret Service agents have said that they were acting according to the agency's protocol. They circled around him and moved together quickly to get him off stage. But stepping away from the conspiracies, let's talk about Thomas Matthews Crooks. Crooks was a 20-year-old boy who graduated from high school in 2022. His classmates said that Crooks used to get bullied in school, and he was a quiet boy.
Yeah. I want to say he was a loner more because he was quiet, but like he was just bullied. Like he was bullied so much.
This was high school?
Yeah.
What did they, do you remember at all what they said to him or called him?
No. He was just made fun of, I guess, for the way he dressed or his appearance.
He graduated 2 months ago from the Community College of Allegheny County. He had no known criminal record and no known mental health problems. Crooks had a membership at a local shooting club for at least a year. On July 12, 2024, Crooks went to the shooting range, where he was a member to practice firing. He purchased over 50 rounds of ammunition and a ladder before going to the rally on July 13th. He successfully requested the day off from work because he had something to do. He told his coworkers he would be back the next day. And the next day he attempted to kill Trump, and eventually he was killed by the Secret Service agent. The FBI are still investigating this case. Luck was on Donald Trump's side that day. And a few days after the incident, Donald Trump gave a welcome speech.
What happened? Tell us what happened, please. And therefore I will tell you exactly what happened, and you'll never hear it from me a second time because it's actually too painful to tell. The amazing thing is that prior to the shot, if I had not moved my head at that very last instant, the assassin's bullet would have perfectly hit its mark, and I would not be here tonight. We would not be together. Tragically, the shooter claimed the life of one of our fellow Americans, Corey, comparator, unbelievable person, everybody tells me. He lost his life selflessly acting as a human shield to protect them from flying bullets. He went right over the top of them and was hit. What a fine man he was. What this administration, the damage that this administration has done, and I say it often, if you took the 10 worst presidents in the history of the United States, think of it, the 10 worst, added them up, they will not have done the damage that Biden has done. Only going to use the term once. Biden. I'm not going to use the name anymore, just one time.
Comment down below whom you want to see as the next president of USA, and like and subscribe. And we will see you in the next one.